Another chunk of intimidation coupled with aggressive statements were piled on the Syrian government this week. The U.S. and its allies are once again talking up the possibility of Assad's regime using its chemical arsenal, while at the same time dishing out threats to engage in its internal conflict. Marina Portnaya has more on what Damascus had to say on that.
As the violence in Syria continues increasing, Western countries may be inching closer and closer towards military intervention. This past week, the U.S., Britain, and France all separately signaled when or why they would take direct action. U.S. President Barack Obama said that Washington would intervene if the Syrian government deployed chemical or biological weapons against civilians. Britain echoed America's sentiments, while France called for the consideration of a partial no-fly zone to be imposed over Syria's airspace, and that is a suggestion that U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton previously made. Now, the Syrian Deputy Prime Minister, who was visiting Moscow this week for talks, has accused Western countries of reaching for any reason that would lead to direct intervention. He also said that President Obama's threats are linked directly to the U.S. elections. Damascus also drew parallels between the Western focus on Syria's chemical weapons and the invasion of Iraq, where the existence of suspected chemical weapons were never confirmed. Now, this uptick in talk and threats over military intervention into Syria comes as the UN Security Council is scheduled to have a ministerial meeting on Syria on August 30th. That meeting was called for and will be chaired by France. Reporting from New York, Marina Portnaya, RT.
Opposition activists claim Saturday was the deadliest day since the start of the unrest, with more than 300 people killed in fighting between pro and anti-regime supporters across Syria. The lion's share of deaths were reported in the suburbs of Damascus, which have been witness to fierce battles of late. But the war hasn't yet swallowed up the whole country, as RT's Oksana Boyko now reports.
Muhib lil Haya, a phrase Syrians use for someone who loves life and a good description of this nation's character. Even during a time of war, some Syrians still preserve their hallmark joviality. The town of Sueda is one of the few communities in Syria still largely unaffected by violence.
It's life as usual here. People come to the park with their families every night. Nothing has changed.
It's a striking contrast to the rest of the country. Just 50 kilometers west lies Dara, the city where the Syrian uprising began, and where going out to buy bread is sometimes a major risk. But for the residents of Sueda, that calm is no coincidence. Populated primarily by the Druze, a religious group that incorporates elements of all major faiths, Sueda has so far proved Syria's most successful peace laboratory. The locals say it's because their culture breeds tolerance.
To be different is a basic right guaranteed by humanity. In Sueda, we have people of different political opinions, but we all respect and accept each other as human beings. That's why Sueda hasn't witnessed any confrontation. We can differ politically, but we still want to preserve our homeland. We have people who are against the government, but they're also against the violence.
There are no army checkpoints on the streets and no fear of rebel snipers on the rooftops. Business is slower than usual, but the outlook is upbeat. This hotel opened its doors just 2 weeks ago. Its general manager is convinced that tolerance, both political and religious, always pays off.
The life have to continue. People have to work, have to accept each other. Hotels is a kind of business which you have to accept others, other cultures, other people, so and so. I think it's good to open at this time.
While the rest of Syria gathers for funerals, in Sueda, weddings are still the most common public event. Munif and Shuruk were among about a dozen couples tying the knot on that particular day.
In hotels, we're used to seeing very different people, and we learn how to accept everybody. That's what Syria needs. Both sides need to stop killing and start talking.
To some in the West, it may come across as ignorance and disregard for those who are suffering, but it's actually the opposite. Syrians always valued the beauty of the simple life, and they won't give it up easily, even at gunpoint.
These people are not oblivious to what's happening in the rest of the country. They are aware of the killings and the suffering and all the destruction. But they choose to go on with their lives. And at least in this city, they're still free to do that.